What is up guys, Cash back again after a small break from visiting a land far away, and today we're taking a look at everything we got in patch 2.6 and breaking down whether or not this new update did enough to keep long-term players invested in the game's future. So let's jump into it. So the new update dropped on Tuesday, and after waiting for over 2 months to see it, players jumped headfirst into patch 2.6 to explore all the new changes as well as the new villain sector featuring the return of MODOK into the game's narrative. And so far most of the reviews have not been kind, and I think most of the criticism has been fair, but there are other things we also have to consider. So for me personally, I went straight for the new villain sector to see how the mission was designed, how the Monica boss fight would be handled, and to check out the new cutscenes to see how the story progresses. And ultimately I came away from it feeling underwhelmed and feeling like it just didn't deliver on some of the things players were hoping for from the new mission content. And others have voiced also being underwhelmed, but for a multitude of reasons. But for me personally, I was hoping for more story beats from this new mission since the developers themselves compared it to the beat in the odds villain sector. That also has Monica as the final boss, but also was used to tie up the Future Imperfect storyline, while also teasing what comes in the future. And Beating the Odds featured several cutscenes, including a war table mission prep scene, as well as a cutscene at the end of the mission that showed what happened with Monica, and if you spoke with Hank Pym at the anthill, it triggered an additional cutscene that sets up Roy becoming Ultron at some point. I know that many of us were also hoping to get a glimpse of Bucky in the new cutscene, but that was never anything the dev team teased or set up. And as a mission, the new villain sector takes about the same amount of time as any other to reach the boss, especially if you blow through all the objectives without exploring. And the boss fight wasn't challenging for me personally, but I do have to note a few things. So the new mission does scale the enemies up to 185, so that when you're hit, it will hurt a bit if you're not built properly, which was a nice thing to see. And for the boss fight itself, initially I thought Monica's clones simply weren't included, which was another reason I felt a bit underwhelmed. But the clones are there, they just don't spawn properly for some reason. And in my initial run, I did encounter Monica's Exo A-posing at times. I shared this information with the devs and they are working to get that sorted, so we should see the boss fight perform properly after a fix in a future patch update, just like we saw with the Taskmaster Wasteland villain sector, where initially he had no dialogue, but after a patch, the mission behaved properly and all of the Kate and Taskmaster dialogue was restored. So if you guys have run into the same issues with the new mission, it is being fixed. Once the mission wraps up, we get a cutscene showing a revived MODOK confronting Monica before they both teleport away. And I'll be doing a breakdown of this scene soon to explain what exactly happened here, but that's all we got for story from this new villain sector, and obviously it sets up the new cloning lab OLT coming later this year, but again, when you go in comparing it to Beating the Odds, the story just felt lighter. We also got new buffs to all the heroes with the exception of Hawkeye, and I think veteran players will benefit the most from these changes immediately, because there is a very noticeable difference in the damage you're able to do now, especially with Hulk and Black Panther. And for anyone who was underwhelmed by Kate Bishop's ultimate, bear in mind it now scales with might, so try it out with a bit of might in your build and the results could be very exciting. The new armor buff that's supposed to stop players from being overwhelmed when staggered has been too inconsistent for me to say whether or not it's good, because sometimes I'm guarded from the second attack, other times I'm getting bombarded as usual, so I'll have to do more testing on that front. I ultimately believe how you feel about this update depends heavily on how long you've been playing the game overall. And I think the devs team's goal was to get something new for players to do while waiting for the big new content update that's coming in 2.7. And I think newer players will get the most out of the new villain sector because the game and the story is still fresh for them. And the new hero buffs were included for veteran players to enjoy, and they know this new content won't scratch that itch you have for bigger missions and new villains. And looking back at what we've seen this year, I just think this strategy of changing the game's core designs to better accommodate newer players while squeezing in small changes geared towards veterans has all been to set up their plans for year 3. Did this new mission wow players? That depends on how long you've been playing, but it does deliver what they said it would. Since it is a new mission, it does have Monica as the final boss with new mechanics, and it does move the overall story forward. It would have honestly been amazing to see Bucky in game in a cutscene, but we will see him in a reveal trailer soon enough, and we'll see gameplay in a war table. The content updates this year have been smaller than ones we've seen in the previous year, and I think it's because the team has been in a transition phase this year. Many of the original team members have moved on from the project, and newer members have to be trained and onboarded, and they're still hiring to expand the team, but that's all for the long term, and we won't really see those benefits until next year when they're working with a bigger team. I know a lot of people are ripping the team for this update, but I think that honestly has more to do with people being burned out on the game and looking to content updates to renew their passion for playing the game, but unfortunately nothing they add is going to do that for those kind of players. And I'll touch on that more in the upcoming video, but if I had to give this update a score, I would say for veterans it's a 5 out of 10. The buffs are fun and the new mission offers more teasers and setup, but the rewards aren't anything special and ultimately it's just one more thing to do for players who are burned out on the current missions. But if you're a new player, I'd say it's a solid 8 out of 10. The new mission will challenge you a lot more, and while the gear isn't great, it can still be serviceable for players just starting out, and the new buffs help to make your heroics feel more impactful. Now I'll pass things off to you guys. How do you feel about the new update, and what are you expecting from patch 2.7 now that you've seen patch 2.6? Let me know down below, and make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more Marvel's Avengers content every week. And if you're interested in picking up Avengers merch, shop with Fandom, and make sure to use my code in the description to get an additional 10% off. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.